This has huge implications for the Montreal Canadiens in this upcoming draft, as they've now slid solidly into 5th, which means that they could get statistically higher odds at the number 1 pick. Plus, one of the Habs targets that they could be going after in the draft may no longer be available where the Habs pick. We got to get into all that. Plus, Florian Jacky, after his recent dominant season in the OHL, is out of the playoffs, and there have been rumors circulating he could join Laval this season. So stick around for all of that coming up on this live episode of Habs Digest. Leave us some comments. Give us some likes, guys, for this live stream, Monday live stream. Thank you all 40 of you here already for being early to the stream. We appreciate you guys so much. Jesse, we got such an exciting episode coming for all the fans. And you know what? Why not just start with the most exciting stuff? And that is the Habs prospects. So here is, again, the mock draft. According to Tankathon, they still have Montreal taking Cole Yzerman there at number 5. But that's the thing, number 5. Arizona has slid ahead of Montreal. Of course, Montreal reeling a bit, a few losses after a nice little stretch. A big loss to New York, 5-2, which you might get into a little bit later. But Jesse, not only that, 5th overall, that gives the Habs a very solid shot at the number 1 overall pick. That difference between 5th and 6th, that's a full 1% chance difference in the number 1 overall pick and a 1% chance difference at the number 2 overall pick. As much as we loved seeing these guys win, it is really exciting this time of year as we're approaching the draft lottery that's coming up in just a month's time to see Montreal sliding down these rankings, seeing the prospects move around, right? I think this is looking to be a really exciting time for Habs fans.
And every spot really matters so much. The fact that we're really kind of going to maximize this pick, right? If we're looking to be a playoff team next year, it's so important to do this pick right. That means getting the best possible selection that we can. We know there's a chance to maybe kind of move out. The greatest chance is obviously sticking around that sort of 5th spot. But I mean, that just helps you so much, especially with some of the players we see. Like, I know there's kind of the top tier with the Celebrini. A lot of people say, okay, a lot of other players all in that second tier. Oh, it doesn't matter so much. No, we want to finish as best as possible to really get that player that's really going to take us over the top. I think that's so important because the higher you get to pick, I think it's really that skill that you start getting more of those cracks at, which I think that's what the Montreal Canadiens need the most. So to be honest, I am so happy, that Kent Hughes is smiling after he's orchestrated all of this.
And you know what? Skill and also commitment to the game and growth. Those are some things that the Habs, like, we have reiterated this in every video we've talked about prospects, but it's becoming more and more true. And I honestly don't think there's a prospect that better exemplifies that than Guhle. This guy, again, was nowhere in people's even first round of draft boards, maybe some people after his somewhat lackluster season last year with Seattle, where he barely played in the Memorial Cup playoffs. But this year, 47 goals in 64 games, 8 goals in 6 playoff games, and he's been linked to the Habs. The Habs have interviewed him apparently 4 times, and according to some sources, he is potentially one of their top targets, though that source is very much disputed. Though, at the same time, when you meet with someone, they're clearly on your radar. But Jesse, one thing with Guhle, I have fallen in love with this prospect ever since I heard the Habs were somewhat linked to him. I was already pretty high on him, but just watching his game and mainly seeing how he's grown throughout the season, that's the big thing to me. He has made adjustments to his game. He has gotten clearly better in different aspects. He has taken the feedback he's gotten from his coaches and all the negatives about him from last year, and he's tried to turn him around. You combine that with great skating, a fantastic shot, one of the best ones in that lottery area for the draft this year, and you just have a top prospect. But now it seems like with his playoff performance, again, recency bias is very much a thing when it comes to the draft, seeing how people end their season. These rankings fluctuate like crazy. I'm starting to see rumors that Guhle might not even be available to the Habs at 5 or 6. I think that's a bit crazy, but it just goes to show, like, even if you want a guy, it's never a guarantee.
And it's showing why they want this guy so much. They're really going for potential kind of once again with Guhle. But I mean, it makes sense that they're going for this guy. It seems like the Montreal Canadiens, the new Montreal Canadiens, are only going for playoff performers. Unless you can really perform when it matters, they don't want nothing to do with you. I mean, we're just seeing crazy production. Like, he was already finishing that late riser, and then he gets in the playoffs. Now 18 points in 6 games. Like, he's just keeping it going. Like, that's absolutely unreal. The playmaking. A lot of people are saying, besides Cole Yzerman, who there's lots of rumors. It's funny, we're talking about Guhle a lot, though. It seems like there's kind of something to it. But, like, besides Yzerman, they're saying that Guhle has the best shot in all this draft. And you have to feel like, besides Cole Caufield, that's something we could use more of. That kind of gets to that skill that we're talking about. It's so amazing that he could look so rough, but then as he displays the skills, just kind of keep coming out, this dime in the rough, he just kind of starts shining even more, and we start seeing all these amazing attributes. But again, somebody that competes, somebody that's winning those puck battles, that can set people up, but they're having an amazing shot. It's amazing to see that, it's kind of a combination of a lot of things we're going for. I don't know yet if I'm sold if he's definitely the one, but I mean, there has to be a reason why he's rising so much right now.
Yeah, he's a hot commodity, and again, like we saw, Slaf rose right at the end of that season where Wright looked like the guy until he didn't, right? And you never know who's going to go. I think it's pretty clear that Celebrini going to go number one. I don't think that's going to change, even with the last couple games of the Frozen Four yet to come later this week, guys. I'm seeing some comments about Lane Hutson hopefully playing for the Montreal Canadiens, and that is very much a thing that could happen. Of course, Lane Hutson and Jacob Fowler both going to be in that Frozen Four in the coming, by the end of this week, we're going to know who wins that tournament, when Lane Hutson will be able to come over and potentially play for the Montreal Canadiens. Of course, with Guhle nursing an injury, Xhekaj nursing an injury, that spot has opened up, right? Like, I don't mean to say I hope Guhle and Xhekaj are out long term, but that is what it is. Other than that, guys, I'd love to get everyone who's here right now, leave us a comment in the chat. It's also subscriber only chat, so if you're noticing you can't send a message, just hit subscribe to the channel, and you're free to send a message into the chat. Let us know who you want from this list here. There's a lot of guys. My pick, I still really love Zane Parekh, honestly, but if it comes to a forward, I think my picks are Cayden Lindstrom or Berkeley Catton, and I think Tisha Iginla is right behind them. I like Yakemchuk too, but I think Iginla, for me, is right behind Lindstrom and Catton, and let us know in the comments what you guys think. I'm just going to go through some of the chats now. Jesse, we got some wonderful people here. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for stopping by. Keep up with the great program. Signing in from Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. Thank you very much. Stephen tuning in from a long, long ways away. Really appreciate it. The people from all over the world who come to watch us. Iginla on the Habs roster, 2 thumbs up pick. More and more Iggy, looking like a true power forward. We can definitely use the second line. Now, Tisha's not as much of a power forward as his father was. However, he doesn't really play that super aggressive game like Jerome sort of did. But Tisha's a fantastic forechecker and relies a bit more on skill. But hey, Jesse, I mean, like, when you're talking about guys who have that strength, I know Tisha's only 6 foot, but like, he plays a more physical game than his size. And even that, no matter what size you are, that can be very valuable.
Yeah, he kind of reminds me of a pinball out there, the way he's kind of bouncing around, but his compete level, how he never really gives up on a play and that's what's actually so amazing about him, and the ability to go and to really attack the net. Now, obviously, this is something that translates very well to playoff hockey, but you would argue all the best teams in the NHL do that. They just funnel everything to the net, and that's the type of player that Tisha Iginla is, right? So it's really amazing to see, like, even for him not being the most, still 6 feet, definitely he's gonna thicken up a little bit more there, but it's like, he still likes that physical part of the game, and I think that's what the Habs are going for. Like, even if you're not the best at it, just showing that willingness to kind of mix it up and everything else like that. And I think that's a player that we really need. Again, we've seen with Slav, like, how important it is to have a player that wins those puck battles. I think when the Montreal Canadiens are going to make their selection this year, they're going to look, okay, what has really worked for us in the past? What attributes do we really want to see going forward, right? Because it's a puck possession game. You need to really have the puck to really make something happen in today's NHL. And I mean, it's really a shooter's league as well, right? You can really see him. If you have a great shot, you have the opportunity to score a lot of goals in the NHL. And that's exactly what the Montreal Canadiens are going for. So it does make sense that we're talking about him, because he's kind of slotting potentially into that area that we're kind of talking about there, and having a lot of the attributes at the same time that would be beneficial for us.
Yeah, and again, the thing for me is the growth, like the ability to grow that much at that age. This dude's still not going to turn 18 until August. That's the thing with Tisha Iginla. Like, I'll pop that back up. He's young, born in August 2006. Oh my gosh, it makes me feel so old. But like, to see the growth he's had at this age is fantastic, and that often projects well for him to be able to learn and grow even more into the NHL game. And when you combine someone who has that raw potential of growth, plus seeing the production that he's done at the level he's at, is phenomenal. So really good there. I'm going to read off some of the people in the comments. Jesse, there's a lot of people really, really up for picking Cole Yzerman. And, I've made it clear. I would still love Cole Yzerman on the Montreal Canadiens. Let me be very frank, but he's not my pick. I have some reservations about Cole Yzerman and how well his game would translate to the NHL. I think he'll be an NHL player. I don't think he's going to be out of the league or anything. But I have reservations about him being like a 30-40 goal scorer like some people say he will be. I'm not saying he will never be, but I don't mean to walk the line with this. but he would not be my pick. Quick thoughts on Cole Yzerman before we maybe move on into some of the other Habs prospect news, Jesse. I mean, I think I know your opinion on him, but to maybe just reiterate for some of the fans who haven't heard it before.
Yeah, well, for me, obviously, I think picking skill is going to be really important. Montreal has a lot of that depth, a lot of that character, but obviously you need to balance that out with the pure skill, which Yzerman has, right? And of course, I think we're going for that complete player, but I've mentioned in the pod before, Josh, how I'm starting to come around to the idea that I feel like Martin St. Louis could probably work with a player like this to try and round out their game. If this is something they feel that they can do, where they can really have their cake and either do have an amazing goal scorer, but okay, this is a guy when he comes over, and of course it's hard to kind of change a player. They can almost seem kind of set in their ways by that point. I still believe it's possible. And if, they get the impression from this player in the lease that he's really ready to do a 200-foot game, kind of show that in the rest of his games, kind of leading up to the draft, I think you have to really consider it, because the guy's obviously, Macklin Celebrini is in a tier of his own, but then you look at Demidov and you look at Yzerman, like those are some of the most just purely skilled guys for me in the draft, So if you get a crack at this type of player, I think that's what Montreal really needs. Like winning board battles and, physicality is all good and well, right? But you really need that shot that just takes it to the back of the net. We're seeing guys that, if you can do that well in the NHL, you can get high 60s, even close to 70 goals. It's crazy to say, but his production has been close to Austin Matthews and the same sort of leagues, right? We're seeing a lot of people are saying this is like one of the best shots that's going to come in the league, since Austin Matthews. So there's a lot to be said there. But again, it's just, can he play the complete game? Because I think the Montreal Canadiens, there's no world where they're not going to go with that. But if there's that opportunity, I would just love that type of marriage right there.
Yeah, for sure. And this is one of the few things me and Jesse disagree with on the show, and I love that. And it's not that we disagree fundamentally on it. It's just I think we see his projections different. That's awesome. And I think a lot of you guys are probably actually against me. I feel like I'm the odd one out here. I'm actually going to toss a poll in the chat. Just hopefully this works. It didn't work last time. Let me just test this. Okay, yeah. So I'm going to toss a little poll here. Who would you pick? Okay, and we're going to put 4 options here. These are not the only 4 options, but we're going to put Tisha Ginla, and we're going to put Kaiden Lindstrom. Okay, oh, there we go. Kaiden Lindstrom. And we're going to add Cole Yzerman. And we are going to add, who's the other one? Berkeley Catton. And I want you guys to answer this poll right now, and I want to see what the percentage is, and we're going to review that when we get into the next subject of the video. We're going to leave it at that for now. We can come back to this prospect stuff later, because there's obviously a lot of stuff we can circle back on, but I'm going to start that right now. Let me know what you guys think in that chat. Hopefully that worked. I believe it did. Go vote. Go vote. We'd love to see. I want to see how many people are against me. I'm the one who disagrees on Cole Yzerman. But Jesse, on that note, I think we transition into a Habs prospect that's already in the system, and that is Florian. We've already talked a bit about Florian, and not according to Stéphane Leroux, but it's, Stéphane Leroux just gave a nice little update. Of course, the Brantford Bulldogs got eliminated in 6 games, 4-2 against the Ottawa 67s in the OHL playoffs. But that means Florian Xhekaj, who had 34 goals this year, well, the season is done, and wouldn't be surprising to see him with the Laval Rockets soon. And someone asked him, can he play, or would he just be, around the team? He said he can play, and that's very true. There's a lot of stuff he can do this year with Laval. Of course, he put up 5 points, 3 goals in the playoffs, a 34-goal point-per-game season in the OHL. Florian Xhekaj has a few options, Jesse. We can get into them after, but the reality is that he can sign an amateur tryout with Laval as soon as he wants, and he can actually play in games down the stretch for them. And that's why the poll was up. When you guys joined the stream, maybe you noticed it. I asked you, should Florian Xhekaj play games for Laval this season? 87% of them said yes, Jesse. What are your thoughts on that? Before we get into the details of the contracts he could sign, would you like to see him play some games this year for the Rocket?
I would absolutely love that. Yeah, get on the amateur tryout. What's great about that is it gets him time to play right there again, jump right into some playoff hockey, but it really gives the Habs a chance to really evaluate too, but kind of offering an ELC contract, once his season's over, right? So I think absolutely he's given you every reason to want to see more. And I feel like Habs management, they're just intrigued by this player, and rightfully so, for being the unicorn that he is. It's like you don't find it's hard to find good guys in the later rounds. He's a 4th round pick. It's just rare. And that's why Florian Jacky is a unicorn. He's just so rare. And I don't call him a unicorn. That's no disrespect in any way. He's one of the meanest unicorns you're ever gonna find. Like, just look at that finish. That's just a beauty backhand right there. So that's it. I would really like to see him just because I feel like he's given us every reason. Like, he's ready to go. He's gonna be great in the playoffs and everything else like that. Like, that type of hockey just suits him. I think we want to see him in AHL just to kind of really see what we have in this player.
Yeah, and I think that's the perfect tryout for him because, again, he was a bit of an overager when we picked him in the draft. Again, I'll just toss that's not his profile up there. He turns 20 in June, right? Like, he's a bit of an overager for the OHL as is, and some people usually, you wouldn't draft a guy in the 2023 draft coming off, your age, whatever, 18th season, or I guess, yeah, back then it would have been that. So, like, it's not as common to pick a guy like that, but they did, and they saw something in him. They saw some kind of untapped potential like we've seen in the Xhekaj family, and I think going to the AHL would be kind of the perfect situation for him, right? That perfect tryout to see how that game would translate, because at this point, there's no point sending him back to the OHL, which they could do. You send him there as a 20-year-old who turns 21 at the end of the season. Like, is he really going to grow? If you want to see Florian Xhekaj thrive, I think you have to see him in Laval, and that, is what brings us to the contract situation for Florian Jacky. And I just want to say, Philippe Letang Poirier, shout out, channel member. We don't have too many channel members, but as I've said before we get into this Florian stuff, if you guys are a channel member, we will answer your messages in priority, just because thank you so much for contributing to the channel, of course, channel members. And if you guys are so gracious or grateful to send a super chat, we would be super thankful for that as well. And we will answer those in priority to the other messages in the chat, because as you can see, there's a lot of messages. We try to get to as many as we can, but just wanted to let you know that's how we order in priority. But Philippe says Cole Hudson. Hey, that is interesting, Jesse. Is it Florian Jacky as well? I would love a Florian Jacky. Maybe before we get to Jacky. Oh, goodness. Well, okay. We'll talk about Cole Hudson in a bit. But the first thing we got to do is we got a super chat from Superfan Angie. A donation in every stream. I think it's this. There we go. Super chat. Thank you so much, Angie. It's really appreciated. Again, no message there. It just says #1 fan. That's what we see usually from Angie. Thank you so much for being such a fan of the show and willing to support us with these streams and with our videos every single day. And again, if you send a message, we will do our best to answer it. But for now, we can just thank you for being the #1 fan. Jesse, maybe before we get to Florian, quick thoughts on Cole Hudson. I know we don't know a whole lot about him, except he's Lane's brother and actually has a very similar player profile. Do you think there's any chance the Habs maybe go after him?
He's like Lane Hudson, but even more competitive. If that's somehow like imaginable, like
younger brother
when you
syndrome.
see this guy, right, in the interview, laser focus, just the determination, everything else. And you got to love players like that. Absolutely. Those are the type of guys you want. That's what I think is so amazing about this young crop of Habs that we have, is just that winning sort of profile, that competitive spirit, while still being pretty cool people, all the same as well. Now, that being said, I feel that there is sometimes an issue of having too many players of like a similar stature or style together. Is you need the combination. You need the different players doing the different things. Even the Davids of Savards of the world, they have their plates that kind of balance out those more offensive type, like the Lanes, like the Cole Hudsons of the world as well, right? But again, we're getting some teammates going on, some brothers. So it's like, it'd be an interesting sort of theme to continue. Obviously, like when you have one of the guys in the organization, you know what you're dealing with in terms of the family. I think there's sometimes some security. I think there's some benefits to that in terms of how they can kind of push each other and just those insights that they can really share. But for me, I would kind of aim on, we just have so many young guys right now. I'm just looking for some more complementary type of pieces right now.
Yeah, I kind of agree, but hey, you never know, right? And if the Habs think he's the best player available, whenever they get the chance to pick him, why not, right? Maybe in a few years we'll have Lane and Cole Hudson, we'll have Florian and Arber Xhekaj, we'll trade for Colton Dach and get him there with Kirby. We already had 3 of the Pitlicks at one point. It's not unheard of for the Habs to go after this kind of style. So thank you for the suggestion. Thank you, of course, Philippe, for being a channel member. And we'll get back to the Florian stuff now, as I'm going to end the poll from earlier with only 1% of the people there. 1 vote for Berkeley Catton. Jesse, but most people actually chose Cayden Lindstrom as their pick at 40%, Tisha Ginla 34%, Cole Eiserman at 24%. Very, very interesting. Thank you guys for voting. So Florian Jacky. Florian Jacky, here's the possibilities, right? You can sign him to an amateur tryout if you want him at all to play with Laval this year. You don't have to, but you could, and I really think they will, just to see how he does, right, in Laval, because that is going to be that transition game. Like, you need to see how this guy is going to do at the pro level. I think he has a decent game to be able to figure it out. Then is the question of what you do for next year. Do you send him back to the OHL, or do you sign him to an entry-level contract, which is something that they could. Now, here's the thing. They don't have to sign Florian Xhekaj to an entry-level contract yet. They have his rights until next June of 2025. So they're kind of free to do whatever they want. If they really don't feel like they want him in Laval, again, he could get sent back to the OHL. So, Jesse, when we're talking about Florian Xhekaj, they could do what they did with Joshua Roy. We saw this very recently where he signed an ATO, amateur tryout, with Laval, played the end of the season, well, I'm not sure if he played mini games. I think he did. And then they signed him to his entry level in the offseason, sort of like a tryout for Laval to see if they like the fit. Then they signed him to the ELC. Do you think maybe that's the route they take Florian? Or do you think they maybe just go ELC straight away just to try and show him, hey, we really believe in you? Or do you think maybe the third outside option where they're thinking maybe we send him back to the OHL even as a bit of an overagent?
I think the ATO makes sense.
Yeah.
And a lot of like Joshua Roy, Joshua was a 5th round pick, Florian Xhekaj 4th round pick. For these later picks, it's kind of the normal route sometimes where it's okay, kind of get that prove it kind of sort of deal. But I mean, I think once Florian gets to Laval, I even find AHL hockey is just going to really suit him. He's going to thrive in that, especially that playoff sort of atmosphere as well. Like, for sure, like, he's a little bit older than some of his draft mates, in terms of where he's at right now. But for me, there's been such a big progression in his game, even though he doesn't have as long of a runway, let's say, for his development, for his progression. Like, he's went from having, 0.37 points per game to over 103 points per game now, just in this last year. Like, that is a massive leap, and it's like, there's still room for this to continue. Maybe we're not going to see those massive jumps kind of in the future there, himself being 20 now and everything else, but there's still a lot of time for him to really round out his game, right? And I feel like the organization is really excited to see what they have to really nurture that. And I feel like he would honestly be a very welcome and helpful addition to the Laval Rocket.
Yeah, you say the AHL is such a physical league. When Reinbacher was there, they got questions of like, are you scared of the physicality? Because other guys in the AHL are going to come after you, and Florian's not going to put up with that. Now, the thing with him that I'm most concerned about, it's not so much the goal-scoring touch, because he's actually shown us surprising growth in that area. He has looked quite good as a goal scorer in the OHL, which is not something I thought I'd say coming into this season. I think his skating, while not bad, definitely needs some work if he wants to get to that real pro level, that one where you can rely on him for even 15 minutes a night, right? He's going to need to pick up some of the speed, some of his direction changing, and his defensive game, while not bad, he still has some lapses occasionally, but who doesn't, right? Especially when you're a guy who is a bit of a late bloomer, just like his brother was. These things can be fixed with time, and within this family, it's something that they're very willing to do, Jesse. And I think, again, that just speaks to things the Habs are looking for in some of their prospects, that ability to adapt, to overcome challenges, to show that you belong. And we've heard Florian say he's truly starting to believe he could play with Arber one day, and you got to think that is going to help lead him to working his butt off to prove that he belongs at every level. And hey, he's done it so far, and I don't see why he can't do that for Laval, and then maybe eventually the Montreal Canadiens.
Yeah, sometimes when you find those players with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, they got a little bit more to prove, right? But that's nice because you got to have that fire. You got to have that compete. We're seeing that a little bit with Jacob Fowler. Obviously, with Arber Xhekaj, he had a really long route. But I would say even the same thing like with Lane Hutson. This guy's got a chip on his shoulder. He's been performing his whole career, outscoring, all of his peers, all of his fellow D-men. But still, people kind of discount him, right? Mm-hmm. He misses out on that first round, even though he's putting up historic numbers, right? So when you have a couple guys like this, it really kind of creates a culture of the team where you're taking every game seriously. As Martin St. Louis has said, is so important, like treating every game like a playoff game. Now, players like Florian Jacky, Lane Hutson, Arber, even guys like Montembeault, right, who had to go that longer route. It's like, you think that Montembeault, that he takes it all happy-go-lucky, but when you see him in a game, one of the things I've been most impressed about this year is he has a fire. Like, he is, when he takes the mask off just a couple times, you can see he is locked in, he's zoned. He wants to win. Don't just mistake it because, he's taking a chill off the ice that he's complacent or something like that. Like, not at all. And I love seeing that from Montembeault, that he's a gamer. He's competitive. Same thing with Primeau too, really battling as well. So some of these guys, sometimes when you have to kind of battle a little bit, it kind of, makes you want to fight even that much harder when you're there to really stay there. And I think, Xhekaj has every example to see, Florian. He's like, you know what? If I put in that hard work though, there's a very good chance that this is going to happen for me.
It's awesome. I just love what I'm seeing from him. I think a lot of the fans, seeing someone call him a direct energy weapon, there's some awesome stuff coming from Florian Jacky. Like that's basically what he is. We really don't know what his upside is at this point. Who knows what the development curve could look like. Speaking of development curves, Jesse, I see an interesting chat there from Dan Wall. He says a lot of players his age lost development time, so it's difficult to know their potential. I'm not sure if you're referring to Florian. You probably are. He said, I'm currently doing research on primary age students that lost time due to COVID. I'm sure there will be effects on younger hockey players that cost them games in pivotal years. And hey, that is very true. It's very possible that, and I think eventually we are going to see that come to fruition, where these players are just not developing at the same speed that we're typically used to, whether it's, maybe way slower. Maybe guys who used to peak at 25 are not peaking at 27, or guys that were having, these draft years at 18 are going to become a lot more unreliable because of lost development years. So very, very interesting stuff. Jesse, before we end this off though, I wanted to just talk about the Habs Rangers game just because of a couple of little milestones in that game. Not necessarily milestones, but cool stuff I wanted to talk about. There's the box score. You can pause the stream if you want to take a look at it, but I don't think you really need to. I'm sure a lot of you guys know what happened. We couldn't get a post game out last night, unfortunately, but hey, Cayden Primeau, great game, 9-11 save percentage. But there's a couple things, Jesse, I wanted to mention. My boy Alex Newhook tied last season's point total. He played 82 games last season. He's played 50 this season, and his numbers are almost the exact same. He has 30 points in 50 games for the Montreal Canadiens, well over half a point per game. Like that's about a 50-point pace, and he's not that far off his career high of 33 points, which he did in 71 games. He could very well get there. Born in St. John's. Shout out St. John's. Thank you, Alex Newhook. Also, Cole Caufield scored a goal in his 4th straight game, randomly ended the season on a hot streak. These two guys, before we end it off, guys, we'll end off in about 5 minutes or so. So get in your chats now if you want to. If you can't chat, make sure you hit the subscribe button so that you can. Newhook and Caufield, Jesse, they have been super impressive, other than, of course, the Slaf, Suzuki, all this stuff. These are guys like Caufield finally hitting his groove, and Newhook really proving, like, holy crap, he is a very good middle six player, are things that just we were hoping to see from the start of the season. We didn't get a chance to see Caufield really hit his goal-scoring stride yet. We didn't see a chance to see Newhook hit his stride yet because of injury, but to see this come into fruition at the end of the season against lots of playoff teams that are trying their best, it's such a good omen, I think.
It really is. And you got to feel like Newhook's really going to continue this into next year. This is an amazing progression. This is exactly why the Habs took a flyer and why they did this big risk and trading away valuable assets for him, as they believe this. But this has to feel so good for Kent Hughes that you're really seeing this happen, right? His speed, his craftiness, his shiftiness. And you got to feel like that's only going to get better next year, playing with Kirby, Dach and company and everything else. And for Cole Caufield, what can we say? Continuing his hot streak. What a way to really finish off the season. But I feel like a really great point that I'm so happy about Cole this year is his ability to stay healthy. After missed so much time last year, we weren't sure with the injury and being a smaller guy, would he be able to would it hold up? Would the shoulder be all right? But the fact that he's been able to play every single game for the Montreal Canadiens, and not just him, but Suzuki as well, Slaf, our top line, some of our key players like this really staying healthy and for contributing for us, doing those little things on the ice, right? Cole, he's just getting better as it goes on. I've liked it the last couple of games. He's starting to shoot a lot more. And you can tell whenever Cole starts the game, he's just firing shots off net. He's wiring it. He's letting it ring. You know that he's found his groove, that he's going to be impactful in this game. So I think that's kind of the trick for Cole. Get your shots off, early and heavy, and that way really get into the game, get your momentum going. That's really going to carry him through.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome to see Cole. Maybe his shoulder's feeling a little better. I don't know. Some of these goals are interesting, like little wraparounds, bank it off the goalie, stuff that Caufield definitely has done before. But, hey, you get a goal anyway, you need to get a goal. They're goal scorers goals in a lot of ways, right? So it's really awesome to see. You're very right. I think this kind of stuff, to see it finally come to fruition and to have this happen at this time of year, like if this didn't happen this year, I wouldn't say I'd be worried. But it would just be like such a bigger mountain to climb, I think, next year. But now these guys know this is what I am. This is what I can do. It's really awesome. And guys, I'm just going to ask you guys, we got 68 likes. but there's 228 of you here, and I know a lot of you guys are subscribers, so if you can just hit like on the stream, push us over to 100, we would really appreciate that, as we got to end this stream in just 2 or 3 minutes, but I want to hit 100 likes before we go, guys. I know you guys can help us out with that. I'm going to go through some of the comments now. I'm really sorry that we can't get to all of them. Again, as you guys can see, there is a ton of messages here in the chat. Wish I could respond to every single one of you. If you have any last minute things you want to send in the chat, if you're a channel member or you want to send any amount into super chat, I will do those in priority. We only got a couple minutes here. I'm going to pick a couple here, Jesse, and some people are surprised that Catton only got a few % of the vote. Yeah, he's really good, but I think the other guys are more interesting as prospects. I saw one question, maybe I'll ask you, Jonathan Marchessault, 2 to 3 years, $7 million per. Are you up for that? I mean, like, I think 2 or 3 years is all the Habs would maybe look at for a veteran like him. Like, maybe line it up for when Anderson and Gallagher's contracts expire. It helps him win now. I know you've been a Marchessault proponent in the past, but what do you think about that deal?
I like it at the 2 to 3 year range for sure. Like, that's if you can get him at that, because you feel like he might want something a little bit more. Maybe because it's Montreal, he's willing to take that 2 to 3 year. But if you're looking for an established goal scorer who shows up every game, that's a playoff performer, this is that proven type of guy. And again, it's all about balancing the guys. Like, it's great to have the young players, but you need that experience to really balance it out. So the fact that we'd be getting a vet in our top 6, what I think is important, kind of replacing that Sean Monahan type, because it's important not just to have the vets, but also in those skill positions too, to kind of mentor those on those lines they're playing with and to help elevate their game as well. So it obviously depends on what's on the market, but based off what we're seeing right now, I totally love the profile of this player in that type of deal.
Yeah, 2 to 3 years is all I would do. I would not go any longer, not a year longer, not 4 years, even if you get him at 1 million for that 4th year, not a chance. Just because you want to open the door to your prospects. You got to pay some guys in the future. You got to pay Slaf. You got to pay Guhle. Those might come after this season. You got to pay Arber. You're going to have to pay a lot of guys. So that's that. Final thing I'm going to answer here is a question about Liam Greentree. I actually think Liam Greentree is a bit underrated by a lot of people talking about who the Habs could pick. He seems like a kind of guy the Habs front office could really like. I'd say keep him on your radar, but don't hold your breath for the Habs picking Liam Greentree. I really like his profile. I'm not convinced he's the guy, especially considering if the Habs do draft 5th, there are going to be some other guys I definitely like a lot better than him. But that's going to be it, guys. Thank you so much. We're at 86 likes, 87. If there's 13 of you who haven't hit that like button to get us to 100, we'd really, really appreciate it, as it's time for the outro. As always, if you enjoyed, leave a like. Thank you. Comment, subscribe to the channel. Hey, comment on the video after we post it. These streams all get posted as videos as well, so feel free to go rewatch in case you missed something. Thank you all, 220 of you, 94 likes. Thank you guys so much for the incredible support. I'm Josh Gosse, my co-host, Jesse Poirier. We'll catch you in the next one.